Yes, so Fading Petals sees the paths of two solitary figures cross. These figures are that of the older woman, who's played by Melanie Revill, and that of the younger woman, who's played by Charlotte Reidie. The pair have a awkward and hostile first encounter, but as the film progresses, the two develop an unexpected bond. Eventually, events culminate one evening over dinner, where buried memories resurface and harsh words are spoken. From there, the older woman begins a slow downward spiral into turmoil as she struggles to accept the fact that the younger woman is no longer an ever-present in her day-to-day life. Well, Fading Petals was not the film that we were planning to make. We had another project called The Trespassers that we were hoping to make. I think it probably began a lot of reading that I was doing during the lockdown, particularly Lewis Carroll, and there was one particular sentence that struck me, which was, "It's no use going back to yesterday because I was a different person then." And I think that was the genesis of the screenplay, and I wanted to examine whether we are defined by our actions, and whether our identity is shaped by those actions. I was also very interested in whether memories could be buried, whether actions could ever be forgotten. Eventually, would they ultimately resurface? So that's how the film began, and yeah, ultimately we shot the film in 11 days with a crew of just 5. The short film we'd made before that had a crew of almost 20, so it was, yeah, incredibly challenging, a really rewarding experience for everyone involved. I think Fading Petals, for a film that was made on such a small budget, looks fantastic, and that is testament to the qualities and the talent that the film's cinematographer Oliver Rigby possesses. He and I had collaborated prior on previous projects, and we had shot exclusively with red cameras, and we had certain lenses that we liked using. But all of that unfortunately went out the window with Fading Petals because a lot of the rental houses were shut and we couldn't get the equipment that we wanted. So that was an enormous challenge. It meant that we were limited when it came to camera lenses, lights, etc. A lot of the lights we had to make ourselves, which was again an enormous challenge, but ultimately I think that although we weren't able to get our first choice in that particular department, it meant that it forced us to be more creative. But yeah, the cinematography coupled with Dan Evans' incredible production design, and then of course the two central performances, which are amazing, really just tied it all together. But yeah, a huge amount of credit goes to Oliver Rigby on this one. Yeah, I think the performances are the standout in this film, across the board, from the two leads to the supporting actors. But with regards to how do you bring out those powerful performances, it's not difficult, you know. And even at times when actors, when Melanie or when Charlotte did things that I wasn't expecting, almost always it was the right decision. And that's one thing I particularly love about film. It is a collaborative medium, and I really enjoy presenting an actor with a script and saying, you know, this is the skeleton, but now it's yours, and you can build from here and make it your own. And you know, hopefully what ultimately happens is the actor turns up knowing more about the character than you ever could. So yeah, I was so lucky to work with Mel and with Charlotte, and yeah, they made my life a hell of a lot easier, simply because of how talented they both are. I'm conflicted on this one, because there were scenes in the script that didn't get shot, there were things that had to be tweaked, and all because of the pandemic. And it's frustrating, and it's a difficult thing to accept even now, 2 years later. You know, it's still difficult. But actually, I think it was an incredible exercise, if nothing else. And I think that's the main job of a film director, is solving problems. And you know, part of the reason I'm conflicted is because although there were some things I would have liked to have done that I couldn't do, there were other things that did happen that weren't expected and turned out brilliant. I think every one of the crew members, and we'd never done anything like that. And it was also an incredible experience, again, because of the COVID bubble. We all had to live in that house that we shot in. So we lived and worked in that same space for 8 days before we did the last 3 days at different exteriors and other places, which again was such an amazing experience. So yeah, it's one that I do have some regrets about, but at the same time have so many wonderful memories, and yeah, it was a great experience. There are so many. Some of the dead ones, it's a cliche, isn't it? But you know, your Brandos of the world. I like to work in a way that blurs the boundaries between reality and the film. And we're always shooting, even before action. Sometimes the cameras are rolling and trying to capture things. So I think it'd be really interesting to work with one of those more classical trained actors, a Richard Burton or a Peter O'Toole. That would be really interesting. I think getting them to turn up to set would be difficult. I'm preparing a script at the moment. The script is finished and we're developing it and trying to raise the funding for it. It's a film called Steeplejack, another feature film. It's set in the north of England in the 1980s, and it's a very, very lonely and physically strenuous job, that of a steeplejack. And I wrote it specifically with Stephen Graham in mind. So I think if there could be anyone, I'll go for Stephen Graham.